I need you to marry me tonight." He said it the way someone says a thing they have rehearsed and then abandoned in the same breath. Too fast, slightly too loud. Standing in the rain on the steps of the Alderton Street shelter with his jacket already soaked through and his car idling at the curb like it was embarrassed for him, Nora looked up from the cardboard she had been breaking down for the recycling bin and looked at this man. Expensive shoes, ruined by the puddle he was standing in, jaw tight, eyes doing something complicated. And then she looked back at the cardboard. "No," she said. "I know how this sounds. It sounds insane. I have until midnight." He pushed a hand through his wet hair, and the water ran down the side of his face, and he didn't bother with it. "My grandfather's will requires that I be married by my 35th birthday. Tonight, or the controlling stake in Harrow Group passes to my cousin, who will dismantle it. 4,000 people lose their jobs. 4,000 M's." He stopped. "I don't know your name. That's a good sign that you shouldn't be marrying me. Please." She had heard the word please many times in many registers in the 4 months she had been staying at the shelter. She had heard it desperate, performative, hollow, and real. This one was real. She could tell the difference by now. She looked at him again, really looked, past the expensive ruin of him, and saw something she hadn't expected. He was not a man accustomed to begging. This was costing him everything he had. "Come inside," she said. "You're getting hypothermia. If you have ever been the only person standing between someone and the thing they were about to lose, stay with us." Because what Nora Chen agrees to, what she discovers inside the Harrow Group, and what this man learns about the woman he married in a city hall at 11:15 on a Tuesday night will change everything you thought you knew about this story. Subscribe right now. We are just getting started. Nora Chen was 32 years old, and she was at the Alderton Street shelter for reasons that were specific and not what they appeared to be from the outside. 8 months ago, she had been a structural analyst at a mid-sized engineering consultancy, with an apartment on Maple, a reasonable savings account, and a life that looked, from any reasonable angle, like a life that was working. Then her mother had gotten sick. Real sick, the kind that moves fast and costs everything. Nora had taken emergency leave, then extended leave, then the leave that becomes the quiet end of a job nobody formally fires you from. She had spent 6 months in her mother's apartment, watching a woman she loved become someone who needed everything. And she had given everything. And when her mother died in the spring, Nora had come back to the city and found that the apartment on Maple had a new tenant. Her savings had a new bottom. And she herself had a new and vertiginous understanding of how quickly the architecture of a life can come apart. She was at the shelter because it was safe and because she had a plan, a real plan, written in a notebook she kept in her bag, with a timeline and specific steps. And because she was not willing to make desperate decisions out of panic. She had watched desperation make bad decisions her entire life. She was 32, and she had a notebook, and she was going to be fine. She had not planned on a billionaire in the rain. His name was James Harrow. She learned this inside, over the shelter's coffee, while he sat across from her at one of the long tables and explained himself with the clipped efficiency of a man summarizing a crisis. His grandfather, William Harrow, had built the Harrow Group from a single steel contract in 1962. James had run it for 7 years since William's death. The will had been William's last and most controlling act, a clause requiring James to be married by his 35th birthday, midnight, or forfeit the controlling stake to his cousin Richard, whose stated intention upon inheriting was to break the company into its component parts and sell them to 4 separate buyers. 4,000 jobs, James said. Some of these families have had 3 generations at Harrow. My grandfather spent 60 years building something that was supposed to last. Richard will end it in a quarter. Why tonight? Nora said. Why haven't you? I was engaged, he said, until 6 weeks ago. She ended it. He looked at his coffee. I don't blame her. I worked too much and I was not giving her what she deserved. He said it flatly, without self-pity, which was the thing that made her believe it. I spent 6 weeks trying to find a solution that wasn't this. There isn't one. Nora looked at him for a long moment. You came to a shelter, she said. I came to 5 places tonight. The shelter was the last. He met her eyes. I'm not here because I think homeless people are less likely to say no. I'm here because everywhere else I tried tonight, the people I asked already knew my name, and their answer was always about what they stood to gain. I needed someone who would hear the question without the noise around it. He paused. I'm aware this is still insane. It's completely insane, she said. What would this mean? Practically, a legal marriage. A period of, I'm suggesting, at least 1 year to satisfy the will's continuity clause. During that time, you'd live in the house. You'd have access to the legal account set up for the spouse's provisions. I'll have my lawyer explain all of it tonight if you agree. At the end of the year, we divorce. Cleanly. With whatever settlement you choose within reason. And you have the resources to go wherever you're going next. He looked at the notebook sticking out of her bag. You have a plan. I'm not asking you to abandon it. I'm asking you to delay it by 12 months. She looked at the notebook. Then at him. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, he said immediately. You should have everything in writing before you agree to anything. You should have independent legal counsel tonight. I'll pay for it. You should have every protection a contract can give you before we walk into that city hall. He folded his hands on the table. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust the paper. That was what did it. Not the money. Not the story about the 4,000 jobs, though that part was real and she felt it. It was that he had told her not to trust him and then told her exactly how to protect herself anyway. A man with bad intentions does not hand you the tools to stop him. I have conditions, she said. Name them. I keep my own schedule. My plan doesn't stop. I continue everything I'm working toward. We're not a performance for the public unless the will requires it. And you tell me exactly what it requires tonight before I sign anything. And you don't lie to me. About anything. Not the company, not the will, not yourself. I would rather know the uncomfortable truth than a comfortable version. James Harrow looked at her across the long shelter table with the coffee going cold between them and said, Done. They were married at 11:15 at City Hall by a judge James had called at 9, who owed him a favor he had never collected, who married them in a room that smelled of industrial cleaner with 2 of James's lawyers and the shelter's night manager, a woman named Gloria, who had insisted on being a witness and had cried anyway as the only people present. Nora wore her cleanest clothes. James wore his ruined jacket. The judge said the words, and they said theirs, and at 11:47, 13 minutes before midnight, James Harrow sent a signed marriage certificate to the Harrow Group's board of directors. The cousin's lawyer called at 12:03. James listened for 45 seconds, and then ended the call. Done, he said. Nora stood in the lobby of City Hall with Gloria and looked at the man she had married 4 hours after meeting him, and thought, I have either just done the most structured and rational thing of my life or the most catastrophically impulsive one, and I genuinely cannot tell which. The house was larger than she had expected, which she had expected. She had her own floor, her own entrance code, her own everything. He had arranged it in the hours between the shelter and City Hall with the organizational precision of a man who understood that her autonomy was not a negotiation point. There was a room that became her office within the first week because she had mentioned the notebook and he had listened. And one morning she came downstairs and there was a desk in the spare room. And he said nothing about it except, "The light is better in the morning on that side." She had not expected him to listen. She had spent 4 months at that shelter recalibrating her expectations of people downward as a protection. And she found herself having to recalibrate upward again, carefully, one observation at a time. She adjusted for it. The year was not what she had designed for. That was also not what she had expected. James Harrow worked with the total commitment of a person who believed that work was the most honest expression of care he had. Care for the 4,000, for the 60 years his grandfather built, for the thing that was supposed to last. She saw it differently once she was inside it. She had expected a man defined by wealth. What she found was a man defined by responsibility, which is a different thing entirely, and heavier, and she had not been prepared to find it attractive. He had dinner made on the nights she forgot. Not by staff, by him, badly, with a focus that suggested he had recently learned to cook and was applying himself to it the way he applied himself to everything. She ate terrible risotto 3 times in the first month and did not say it was terrible. Because the fact of it, the fact of him standing in the kitchen at 8 o'clock trying, was worth more than the risotto deserved. He read her engineering work. She had started consulting again in month 3, small contracts, rebuilding, and she left reports on the kitchen table, and twice she found them with margin notes in his handwriting. Not corrections. Questions. The kind a person asks when they're genuinely trying to understand something. She asked him about the 4,000. He took her to the Harrow plant in the 3rd month, a vast, organized, specific place full of specific people whose names he knew, whose children's names he knew, who waved at him with the ease of people who are not performing deference. She walked beside him and watched him and thought, this is why. This is the whole of why, not the grandfather's will, not the money. This, she kissed him in the car on the way back. Not strategically, not after deliberation, not as a performance. She kissed him because he had spent 3 months not asking her for anything and showing her everything, and she had run out of reasons to treat this like a transaction. He was very still for a moment. Then he said, the contract. I know, she said. The year isn't up. I know. I don't want you to do something because you feel, James. She said his name the way you say a name when you need someone to stop talking. I kissed you because I wanted to. Not because of the house or the contract or the 12 months. Because of the risotto. He looked at her. The risotto was terrible, he said. It was genuinely terrible, she said. And you made it anyway. 3 times. He kissed her back, slower than she had kissed him, more certain, the way he did everything, like a decision that had already been made and was now simply being enacted. Richard Harrow appeared in their life exactly once. He came to the house in month 8, ostensibly to discuss a shareholder matter. Actually, to find a crack in the foundation. He was a thin man with a careful smile and the eyes of someone who had been calculating something for a long time and was now finally close enough to check his arithmetic. He sat in the living room and looked at Nora with the specific assessment of a man deciding whether her presence was legal, marital, or merely cosmetic. He asked her, with the thin politeness of a man who wants to be rude but can't afford to be, how she had met James. At a shelter, she said pleasantly. I was breaking down cardboard. He was soaking wet. Richard looked at James. James looked back at him with an expression so completely neutral, it was its own form of aggression. "She knows everything about the will," James said. "She knew everything the night I asked her. If you're looking for a seam, there isn't one." Richard left without discussing the shareholder matter. Nora waited until the car had gone and then said, "He's going to keep trying." "Let him try," James said. "The marriage is real. The year is almost up." He looked at her. "Although I would like to discuss what the year being up means for us." Specifically, she looked at him. "Are you asking me to stay?" "I'm asking what you want," he said. "Whatever the answer is, I want to know the honest one. I told you not to trust me at the beginning. I'm asking you to trust me now. That's not a small ask," she said. "I know." He sat down across from her. The same posture as the shelter table, the same stillness. "I know what I'm asking. I'm asking anyway." She thought about the notebook. The plan, still in progress, mostly intact, substantially evolved. She thought about the margin notes, the risotto, the plant and the 4,000, and the names of their children. She thought about a man standing in the rain outside a shelter, saying please in the register that meant he meant it. "The contract ends in 4 months, she said. "Yes, I'd like to renegotiate it." He was quiet for a moment. "Then, what terms?" "No end date," she said. "Everything else stays. The honesty, the conditions, the independent schedule." She looked at him steadily. "And you have to keep making the risotto." "It's getting better," he said. "It really isn't. I'm working on it." "I know," she said. "That's the whole point." They were remarried, truly married, the word finally meaning what it should, on a Saturday afternoon in the spring, in the garden of the Harrow house, with Gloria from the shelter in the front row and a yellow hat she had bought for the occasion, and James's 4,000 in collective spirit if not in person, and a judge who this time was not owed any favors, but came because he wanted to. Nora wore something she had chosen herself, in a shop on Maple Street, the same street where the apartment had been, the one she had lost and not returned to, and did not need to return to, because the place she was building was better. James wore a suit that fit. No rain. 2 years later, their daughter arrived, small, opinionated, with her mother's precision and her father's stillness, who at 6 months old assessed every new person in the room with the thorough gravity of a hiring committee. They named her Clara, after James's grandmother, who had, according to family legend, also married a Harrow man in improbable circumstances, and had never once regretted it. On the night of Clara's first birthday, James gave no speech. He sat at the table with his daughter asleep against his chest, and his wife across from him and Gloria eating cake in the corner. And he looked at the room, the real, specific, earned room of it. And he said quietly, "To no one and everyone, this is the thing that was supposed to last. Not the company, not the 60 years. This, some emergencies turn out to be invitations. Some rainy Tuesday nights outside his shelter are actually the beginning of the only story that ever needed to be told. Some women with a notebook and a plan find that the plan was always going somewhere better than they knew. And some men who have spent their whole lives holding things together finally find someone worth falling apart in front of. Trust the paper. Then, when the paper has done its job, trust the person. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who believes in impossible beginnings. And subscribe, because every week we tell the stories that change the way you see things, and we are just getting started.